The lecture hall fell silent when Professor Kelvin announced the sparring assignment. 200 students from 47 species sat in the Galactic Academy's combat theory class, and not one of them looked happy about what came next. Physical demonstrations were rare. Most species preferred simulations. Safer that way. Cleaner. Less paperwork when someone got hurt. But humans? Humans loved paperwork apparently, because the girl in the back row was grinning. Her name was Sara Chen, and she was the only Deathworlder in a room full of civilized beings. The Terrans had joined the Galactic Council 3 years ago, and their reputation preceded them like a biological weapon. High-gravity worlders, persistence predators, endurance hunters who chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their planet killed them daily, and they called it home. Sara wore the standard Academy uniform, but somehow she made it look tactical. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that tracked movement like a scanner. She sat with perfect stillness, the kind that predators use right before they pounced. Thex, a Valerian from the methane colonies, leaned toward his friend. Why does she always sit in the back? Predator instinct, whispered Mora, a gentle plenary whose species evolved from herd grazers. They like watching everyone. That is horrifying. That is accurate. Professor Kelvin tapped his datapad, and 2 names appeared on the holographic display. Zander Cross and Sara Chen. Please approach the sparring circle. The room collectively held its breath. Zander stood slowly. He was Drouthian, a species known for tactical brilliance and cold calculation. 7 feet tall for arms, exoskeleton that could deflect small arms fire. His people had conquered 6 systems before joining the council peacefully. Warriors respected warriors, and Drouthians respected very few species. They certainly did not respect humans. Zander walked to the circle with the confidence of someone who had never lost. His lower arms flexed while his upper arms remained loose and ready. The exoskeleton plates across his shoulders gleamed under the artificial lighting. Sara hopped down from her seat, moving with an ease that made several students flinch. She was small by human standards, maybe 5.5 feet, but she moved like water flowing downhill. Inevitable, efficient, unstoppable. She entered the circle and stretched her neck, producing a series of pops that made Mora whimper. Standard sparring rules, Professor Kelvin announced. No lethal force. No permanent damage. First to yield or exit the circle loses. Medical team standing by. That last part was new. Zander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. I will try not to hurt you too badly, little human. Your species is fragile, yes? Sara smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile of someone who knew a secret. And that secret was going to hurt. Fragile, she repeated, rolling the word around like she was tasting it. Yeah, we are super fragile. We bruise like peaches. Bleed if you look at us wrong. Total glass cannons. Then perhaps you should yield now and save yourself the embarrassment. Where would be the fun in that? Professor Kelvin raised his hand. Begin! Zander struck immediately. His species did not believe in honor when survival was on the line, and his upper right fist shot forward like a piston. The blow would have crushed a plenary skull, would have shattered Valerian bone structure, would have ended 90% of species in the Academy. Sara was not there when the fist arrived. She had slipped left, inside his guard, and her elbow came up fast. It caught Zander under his secondary jaw with a crack that echoed through the lecture hall. His head snapped back, and for the first time in his life, Zander Cross felt something new. Pain. Real pain. The kind that made his vision blur and his balance falter. The class erupted into shocked chatter. Thex nearly fell out of his seat. Mora covered her eyes with 3 of her 6 hands. Zander recovered quickly because Drouthians were warriors, and warriors did not show weakness. He spun, all 4 arms moving in a coordinated assault pattern that had won him tournaments across the sector. Sara ducked on the first strike, blocked the second with her forearm, and the impact sounded like a hammer hitting wood. Caught the third wrist and twisted, using his own momentum to pull him off balance. The 4th arm came in her face, and she leaned back just enough that the claws whistled past her nose. Then she swept his leg. 7 feet and 300 pounds of Drouthian warrior hit the mat hard enough to crack it. The lecture hall went completely silent. Zander's breathing had changed. Faster, harder. His exoskeleton was designed to protect him from projectiles and energy weapons, not from a small primate who fought like physics was optional. He rolled his feet, and something changed in his posture. The confidence was gone, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. His lower left hand reached behind his back and drew something from his belt, a blade, 10 inches of folded alloy that could cut through ship hull plating. Illegal in sparring matches. Illegal in the academy. Illegal in 40 systems. Professor Kelvin shouted something, but Zander was not listening. "You humiliated me, human," Zander hissed, and his voice had gone quiet. "Deadly. I will carve that smile off your soft face." The class panicked. Students scrambled backward. Thex grabbed Mora and pulled her toward the exit. Someone hit the emergency alarm, and red lights started strobing across the ceiling. Security would arrive in 90 seconds. Sara had less than that. She looked at the knife, then at Zander, then back at the knife. Her smile grew wider, brighter, more terrifying than anything Zander had ever seen on a battlefield. "Oh," Sara said softly, and her voice carried across the chaos like a whisper in a graveyard. "Oh, you beautiful idiot. You just made my entire semester." Zander lunged. The blade came in low, aiming for her stomach. A disemboweling strike that would end the fight in seconds. He was fast. His people were apex predators on a world where everything had claws. But Sara was from Earth. Earth, where the atmosphere was poison to most species, where the gravity crushed visitors, where the wildlife had not gotten the memo that sentient beings were off the menu, where humans looked at a lightning storm and said, "I am going to fly a kite in that." Sara moved. Not away. Not back. Forward. She stepped inside the knife's arc, and her left hand caught his wrist. Her right hand came up under his elbow, and she did something that made every combat instructor in the building take notes. She used his own joints against him, applying pressure in a direction nature never intended. The blade clattered to the mat. Zander screamed. It was not a warrior's battle cry. It was genuine agony as his arm bent in ways evolution had not prepared him for. Sara swept his legs again, but this time she did not let him fall alone. She rode him down, maintaining control of the arm, and when they hit the mat, she had him in a joint lock that made Professor Kelvin wince. "Yield," Sara said calmly. Zander tried to strike with his free arms. Sara applied more pressure. Something in his shoulder popped. "Yield." Zander reached for the knife with his lower right hand. Sara's leg snaked out and kicked it across the mat. Then she shifted her weight, and Zander's entire body went rigid as pain receptors. He did not know he had started screaming. "I said yield." "I..." Zander's voice cracked. "I yield. I yield." Sara released him immediately and stood up. She was not even breathing hard. The security team burst through the doors, weapons drawn, and stopped dead when they saw Zander curl on the mat, cradling his arm. Professor Kelvin stood frozen, datapad hanging forgotten in his hand. Sara brushed off her uniform and looked at the class. 200 faces stared back at her in absolute silence. She shrugged. "Where I come from, pulling a knife in a fistfight is bad manners. Also incredibly stupid, but mostly bad manners." Thex found his voice first. What are you?" Sara picked up her water bottle from the edge of the mat and took a long drink. "Tired, mostly. Hungry. Could really go for some noodles." "Oh, and human. I am very, very human." The medical team arrived and started working on Zander, who was muttering something about demons and Deathworlds. Professor Kelvin finally found his composure. "Miss Chun, pulling a weapon and sparring is grounds for immediate expulsion and criminal charges. Mr. Cross will be..." Yeah, Sara interrupted. "He is going to be expelled, prosecuted, probably deported. I have seen the show before." She looked at Zander, and her expression softened slightly. "For what it is worth, you are a decent fighter. Good speed, solid technique. You just made one really stupid choice." "What choice?" Zander gasped through the pain. Sara's smile returned, sharp as the blade on the floor. You thought Earth was going to raise weak children. She walked toward the exit, and the crowd parted like she was radioactive. At the door, she paused and looked back at Professor Kelvin. I am going to file this as self-defense. But yeah, call my embassy anyway. They love this stuff. Makes great PR. She waved at the stunned class. See you next week, everyone. Remember to stretch before combat. Flexibility saves lives. Then she was gone, leaving behind a crack mat, a traumatized Drouthian warrior, and 200 students who suddenly understood why humans were classified as Deathworlders. Thex turned to Mora. Did that actually just happen? Mora was still covering her eyes. I refused to believe it happened. She smiled when he pulled the knife. I know. She smiled, Mora. I know. Professor Kelvin dismissed the class early. Nobody argued. The news spread to the academy faster than light through a wormhole. By dinner, everyone knew about the human girl who disarmed a Drouthian warrior after he pulled a blade. By evening, the security footage had leaked, and students were watching it on datapads in hush groups. By the next morning, Sara Chen was the most famous student in the academy, and she absolutely hated it. She sat in the cafeteria, trying to eat her noodles in peace. But peace was apparently not on the menu today. A group of Valerian students kept staring from 3 tables away. A cluster of plenary whispered behind their hands. Even the faculty members walking past slowed down to get a look at the Deathworlder, who had become an overnight legend. Sara stabbed her noodles with more force than necessary. You know, said a voice across from her, most people enjoy the attention. Sara looked up to find Commander Liu, the human liaison officer, sitting down without invitation. He was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples and laugh lines around his eyes. He also moved like Sara moved, with that same predator's grace that marked all Terran military personnel. Most people are idiots, Sara muttered. Commander Liu laughed. Fair point. How are you holding up? I am eating noodles and being stared at like I am a zoo exhibit. Living the dream, sir. Drop the sir. I am not your commanding officer, just your species representative who has to explain to the Drouthian embassy why their golden boy is in medical with a dislocated shoulder and shattered pride. Sara winced. Is he going to be okay? Physically? He will heal. Mentally? Commander Liu shrugged. He pulled a knife on an unarmed opponent in front of 200 witnesses and a dozen cameras. His career is over. His family is disgraced. The Drouthian High Command is demanding his immediate return home for, and I quote, re-education. That sounds ominous. It should. They do not handle failure well. Commander Liu leaned forward. But that is not why I am here. I need to know what you were thinking when he pulled that blade. Sara set down her chopsticks. Honestly, I was thinking about my little brother. That was not the answer Commander Liu expected. Your brother? Tommy. He is 12. Gets bullied at school because he is small for his age. Last month, some older kids cornered him behind the gym. 3-on-1. They did not pull knives, but they might as well have. Sara's expression hardened. He fought back anyway. Came home with a black eye and a suspension, but those kids do not bother him anymore. And that reminded you of yesterday? No. What reminded me of yesterday was what I told Tommy after. Sara met Commander Liu's eyes. I told him that bullies always escalate. They push until you push back. And when you push back harder than they expected, they either learn or they break. Zander was a bully. Maybe not normally. Maybe he is usually decent. But in that moment, with his pride hurt and his status threatened, he became a bully with a knife. So you decided to teach him a lesson. I decided not to die. Sara picked up her chopsticks again. Everything after that was just self-defense with style points. Commander Liu studied her for a long moment. The Academy board is meeting this afternoon. They are going to ask you questions. Lots of questions. Some of them are going to imply you use excessive force, that you could have de-escalated, that maybe you wanted this to happen. Let them imply whatever they want. I have the footage. I have 200 witnesses. I have a knife that should not have been in that sparring circle. What they think does not change what happened. And what happened, in your own words? Sara set down her chopsticks again and spoke with the careful precision of someone who had thought about this extensively. I was attacked with a deadly weapon by an opponent who outweighed me by 150 pounds and had 4 arms to my 2. I defended myself using non-lethal techniques that resulted in a surrender. I did not strike him after he yielded. I did not use excessive force. I did what I was trained to do, which is survive. Commander Liu smiled. Good answer. Stick to that. Do not embellish. Do not get emotional. Do not try to be clever. Just tell the truth. Were you worried I would not? I was worried you might tell them what you really think about species that consider self-defense to be controversial. Sara's grin was sharp enough to cut. You mean I should not tell them that most galactic species are so far removed from natural selection that they have forgotten what actual danger looks like? That they have built a civilization so safe and sterile that violence has become theoretical? That they look at humans and see monsters because we still remember how to fight? Exactly that. Do not say any of that. Even though it is true, especially because it is true. Commander Liu stood up. The hearing is at 1400 hours. Wear your dress uniform. Be respectful. Answer their questions. Let me handle the politics. He started to leave, then paused. One more thing. That smile you gave Zander when he pulled the knife. The one that is all over the security footage. The one that is giving half the student body nightmares. What about it? What were you actually thinking in that moment? Sara's expression went distant for a second, like she was back in that sparring circle, staring down a blade. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but absolutely certain. I was thinking that he just gave me permission to stop holding back. Commander Liu nodded slowly. That is what I thought. And that, Sara Chen, is why the rest of the galaxy is terrified of us. Not because we are stronger or faster or tougher, though we are all those things. They are terrified because when they see a weapon, they see death. When we see a weapon, we see Tuesday. He walked away, leaving Sara alone with her noodles and her thoughts. The hearing went exactly as predicted. The Academy board asked their questions. Sara answered with calm precision. Commander Liu provided context about human psychology and combat training. The Drouthian representative demanded justice, which translated to wanting Sara expelled or worse. Professor Kelvin, surprisingly, defended Sara. He described her restraint, her control, the fact that she could have done far worse and chose not to. The board deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. Their ruling. Zander Cross was expelled, banned from Academy grounds, and facing criminal charges in 3 jurisdictions. Sara Chen was cleared of all wrongdoing and commended for her restraint under life-threatening circumstances. Outside the hearing room, students had gathered. They parted when Sara emerged, creating a corridor of stunned faces and wide eyes. Thex, braver than most, stepped forward. Sara, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you smile? Sara considered the question seriously. Because I was scared. That was not the answer anyone expected. Scared. Morris squeaked. You looked like you were enjoying it. I was terrified, Sara admitted. Zander is bigger, stronger, has more arms, and was holding a knife. Any one of his strikes could have killed me. The fear was huge, overwhelming. Then why smile? Because fear is just chemistry, adrenaline, cortisol, evolutionary programming that says run or fight. And I cannot run in a sparring circle. So I rewrote the fear into something useful. Confidence, aggression, the kind of energy that makes you sharp instead of frozen. Sara shrugged. The smile was me telling my brain that I was the predator, not the prey. Fake it until you make it, you know? Thex stared at her. That is insane. That is humanity, Sara corrected. We turned fear into a tool. We looked at everything trying to kill us and said, not today. We fell out of trees and invented parachutes. We got struck by lightning and invented electricity. We nearly went extinct a dozen times and just kept getting back up. She looked at the assembled students. So yeah, I smiled, because smiling in the face of danger is what my species does best. She walked past them heading for the exit. Behind her, 200 students watched her go and understood something fundamental about humans. They were not stronger or smarter or more advanced than other species. They were just too stubborn to know when to quit. In his medical bay, Zander cross-watched the hearing results on his datapad. His shoulders still ached. His pride hurt worse. But somewhere under the humiliation and pain, something else stirred. Respect. He had fought battles across 6 systems. He had defeated champions and warriors. He had thought himself unbeatable. Then a small human girl with a terrifying smile taught him what real combat looked like. He would heal. He would return home. He would face his family's disappointment and the high command's judgment. But he would never forget the lessons Sara Chen taught him. Never bring a knife to a Deathworlder fight. Sara made it back to her dorm room just as the sun set over the academy campus. She locked the door, stripped off her dress uniform, and collapsed onto her bed. Her hands were shaking. The adrenaline crash hit hard, and she curled into a ball, letting the fear she had been suppressing finally surface. She had been terrified. The smile had been real, but so had the knowledge that one wrong move would have gotten her killed. Her comm unit beeped. A message from Tommy. Saw the news. You are famous. Also, you are terrifying. Love you, sis. Sara laughed, and it came out half-sob. She typed back. Love you too, little brother. Stay tough. Outside her window, the academy continued its routine. Classes tomorrow. Studies. Assignments. The mundane rhythm of education. But everything had changed. The galaxy had learned something about humans today, and Sara Chen had been the teacher. The lesson was simple. Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Do not assume small means helpless. And never, ever pull a knife on someone from a death world unless you are prepared for them to smile. Because when a human smiles in the face of danger, it means only one thing. Class is now in session, and the final exam is going to hurt.